He's a pillar of community opinion.
Wake Up with Rob Snow returns on City News 1011.
It's time for Money Monday with Peter Fraser, certified financial planner with Credential Q Trade Securities and the Alterna Wealth Management Group here in Ottawa. And today we are talking about life expectancy and income stability. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm very good.
Good.
But we want to live well into our old age.
Yeah, a couple of points this morning about living too long, or if we put it another way, that's the longer life expectancy. That actually points to some specific aging-related risks that often remain overlooked in financial plans. So we've talked before, you and I, about the importance of stress testing a good plan for income stability. Income that endures longer than you might think you need it. So I like to do this by pushing out lifespan to 100. And that's actually not an unreasonable projection, because living longer is a serious thing here in Canada. The 100-year-old is currently our fastest growing age cohort. So by doing this, you can see how your plan fares when you tack on another potential decade of financial resources usage, or what I like to call money burn. And the second risk of this, often it's important to remember that longer living phenomenon doesn't always imply good health throughout those last years. In fact, a lot of things can happen in those later years of life that require a specific kind of planning. And this is really a really good reason to have a current power of attorney, and that having one that pairs with the details in your financial plan to address an incapacity is also important. So you and I have talked as well about the degree of intestacy or not having a will in Canada. But I think because diminished capacity is something we just would like to ignore, it's also the case that many situations reflect a POA, or power of attorney, that doesn't exist. So it has the potential to cause some trouble. Thought we could leave a few ideas this morning that help listeners avoid these mistakes. And
Sure.
I wanted to start with two important things to consider in doing so. So we want to ask ourselves, first of all, who? And that really means thinking carefully about who would you trust to act on your behalf if you're incapacitated. It's probably not a long list, and the alternative, of course, is a provincial bureaucrat making these choices, so that's not the right who for many of us. The second one is what? What are your specific wishes if it came to things like your personal care? What about the management of your money if you couldn't make that decision yourself? Because it's sad, but it is true that the landscape in our country is littered with real-life stories of families' failure to discuss and document these kinds of things. Sometimes leads to conflict, sometimes can lead to litigation. So if we settle the who and the what, then I thought we could take a look at just three quick steps that I think are important. Get the who and the what recorded in a complete set of planning documents. Obviously, these can cost as little as a few $100s, but legal documentation like this does help reduce confusion. It obviously helps with eliminating conflict. Otherwise, you lose the opportunity to provide clear instructions for things like this. I also want to remind folks that fewer might be better. It's important to remember that. So what do I mean? The reality is that the more people you appoint in these areas, the greater the potential for conflict. So one example is I often see parents feeling obligated to name all their kids on documents like this, but frankly, it could be wiser to just choose the one most capable of handling a responsibility, or if more than one is needed, then choose the two that can play nicely in the sandbox together.
Okay.
And the last but the most important piece of having this done is to communicate. Obviously, discuss those instructions, and ideally long before you become incapacitated. So talk over your healthcare wishes. Talk over your food, your hygiene, your religious preferences, your shelter, your living choices. I mean, a good example of something that's changed over the years is everybody often having had what's called a DNR, like a do not resuscitate order. But, I mean, we all know that there's been huge advances in medical science and practices and technology. So people have different wishes now for a dementia-related incapacity compared to a heart attack or stroke. And, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you that your financial planner can provide significant value in driving conversations like this. Anyone who's experienced incapacity with a loved one knows it can be very, very expensive, multiple thousands of dollars for months and months and months. So a good plan can help you ensure that funding of incapacity comes into place if it hits, because good care isn't cheap. So yes to a POA, and the power of attorney is really important, because although the conversation around it can be hard, they also can ensure that your wishes are carried out, and that the way you want to have that done is done so with a minimum of hassle.
And you would rather it done your way than have it done for you, as you said, by a government bureaucrat.
I think
that's our time, Peter. We're a little tight on time, Peter. For people who would like to know more, it's Money Mondays at alterna.ca.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Peter Fraser, certified financial planner, Credential Q Trade, and Alterna Wealth Management. David Smith coming up with what on the Talkback Hour?
Well, today I want to talk about national defense, Rob. With all of these unidentified flying objects being shot down in North American airspace, a lot of people have questions, concerns about Canada's defense capabilities. So pretty simple question for the listeners today. Would you like to see the government spend more on national defense? Is that something that you would like to see in the next federal budget?
Okay. All right. David Smith, Talkback Hour, 750-1310 after the 9 o'clock news, traffic and weather. Once more, here's Gord.